Hey, welcome. We have Pink's NFT tonight. Very excited for this project, formerly known as Pink Panther, one of our official picks with the DeFi Angels. Um, just been a fun project to watch. I'd like to, introduce the team here. And if you're comfortable with telling us your real names, we love to hear that. But tonight we have Lady Crypto, Josh James. We also have Dream Token and Dink. So if you guys want to introduce yourself, starting with Lady Crypto to the community, that would be very helpful.
Sure. I'm Lady Crypto, also known as Samantha. And I've been on board since almost the beginning. And it's been quite a ride, and sort of watching things progress and grow and change over the months has been like a really good time. And just it's been fun, and I cannot wait to sort of see what happens once we launch everything and really get going.
Thank you. And Josh, I think most people know who you are, but just real quick, why don't you give the community just a quick intro about yourself, please?
Yeah, hey everyone. So I'm not Josh James, but it is me. And I think a lot, talk a lot. Sometimes I do things, and very honored anytime people give me the opportunity to share my thinking and let me work on cool stuff.
Very cool. And for those that don't know Josh, he has a very complex mind. I love listening and can't wait really to dive in this AMA, with you being brought on the team. So it's exciting stuff. And next, Dream Token. Please give us an intro if you don't mind.
Well, I'm Dream Token, also known as Randy, and I came in about the same time as Lady Crypto, and have shared that same kind of, I'm going to call it an evolution, because that, in my mind, that's really what this project has been. And now that we're seeing some fruits of the labor and whatnot, I love that we're going to get to share with some more things with you guys here tonight.
I like the word evolution of it. And I'll explain more into the intro after we introduce Dink here, our final member on the team for Pink's NFT. But yeah, that's a great word there, Randy, the evolution of it. Love that. But Dink, please, if you don't mind, just a quick maybe intro about yourself would be very helpful for us. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dink, and also known as Dink here. Anyway, I'm a comic book artist. I also create motion comics, animations, and doing storyboards for movies and other stuff. So actually, I was a stranger to this world, but my brother pulled me into this, and I came up with this idea to create a comic series because I believe in the evolution as well in the comic industry. So in a short time, I believe this whole thing will going into a more digitalized world. So this thing will be, successful, I believe.
Absolutely. And it's a pleasure to, be connected with all of you here tonight. It's really exciting. The NFT world is absolutely zooming at the moment. Obviously, check gas fees on the Ethereum network, right? So, look, I personally got into Pink Panther at first off a recommendation from one of our investor members and also a great just friend of mine overall that has been a resource for me in the community and in the overall space. He said there's great people behind the project. It's something that we can get behind that's on the comic side, right? So I was really interested in that side of it. And so as I move forward, I wanted to learn more. And so as I dove into the project and really everything about it, I started to love it, and especially the community, especially just the team behind it. It was very passionate, right? So, and that's what I experienced at the very start of getting in the project. So just to kind of take a step back, I would love to know how Pink Panther was incepted, right? The idea behind it and when it was created, and how that came to fruition, and really how that started. That would, be a great start to this, I think.
I think, Dink, you'll have to start that one, because that began with you and your brother before it became a thing.
Yeah, well, as I believe, I believe that my brother wanted to create a different name, not Panther, maybe Flamingo, I don't know. But then he came up with this name. At first, he believed that this wouldn't be a much problem. There's another Pink Panther name in the whole industry in the world. But then as things move and as things go on and on, we believe that we had to change the name to maybe just to Pink. Yeah. And with the comic series and all of that, with all our connections, my connections in Marvel and DC, I must have mentioned before that I have a lot of illustrators, comic book artist friends who work in the worldwide industry. So we talked a lot. We made the conversations a lot. So we made a conclusion to change to this direction. And yeah, we create something with the pink. How can I explain? The pink color and the whole design, everything, to more appealing to the eye.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
if you don't
what was that?
mind, Dink, I'd like to just say something that your brother Savas, the way he explained it to me about the inception of Pink, if that's okay. Is that a yes?
Yes. It is too late here, so I'll just listen.
That's okay. That's okay. And the reason I want to tell this story is just to show how organic it is. A lot of projects, they start, with big teams, and they have these big grand, planned out, laid out, ideas and plans that have to happen, almost like a business plan, and they have to happen to a T. What I like about this project is it's more organic from the ground up. Um, Last year, or earlier, sorry, this year, Onar's brother, Dink's brother, which, by the way, you didn't say it, Dink, but that's actually his real name, that you see there, attached Dink's, Telegram title there. But, it was a lockdown over in Turkey, like it was in a lot of places during COVID. And Dink's brother Savas is a professor of industrial engineering at a university in Turkey. And as part of that industrial engineering courses, there's some writing code, teaching code as part of those courses. And he also had some background writing Solidity and other, not in cryptocurrency, but in more industrial applications, which, yes, there are other things you can do with Solidity besides make coins and NFTs. But so he said, well, what should I do? We're in a lockdown. I've always wanted to do, create a cryptocurrency and, kind of put my Solidity skills to use for me. So, that part, I guess, was kind of easy for him, just to say, okay, we're going to do this. And what you have to remember is that Pink came out, several months ago. And as we know in the crypto world, especially cryptocurrencies, things change quite a lot, very fast. We went from coins that had team tokens or just straight coins with no taxes to the redistributions. That was the big thing for a while. And, Pink launched soon after other popular coins, Shiba and Emax and several others. So that's why the tokenomics are the way they are, which we can talk about later. But so he came up with this. He said, okay, here's a contract I'd like to use that I've worked on. And so now we need a purpose. And of course, he thought of his brother Onar, and how good his work was, and started thinking about how to share it, and how do we leverage that. And it developed into this idea that we need a place for these comic artists, which sometimes sit in the shadows and nobody knows. We need a tool, we need a place for them, and we need a tool for them to kind of get their work out. Not be so reliant on being picked up by Marvel or DC Comics or Dark Horse. And since his brother is in the business, it was a perfect match. And so that's how it actually got started. At the grassroots. No big team. No fancy plan. Just two brothers, with an idea and a goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a lockdown, a lot of time, and it sounds like experience previously with Solidity, in other sectors is actually very advantageous. I mean, that's, great news for investors to hear, somebody transitioning into crypto with that experience is really cool. And to that point, yeah, it's used in a lot of various sectors. So exactly what I was looking for there. And a couple of things I didn't know too. So cool story there. And so, where we're at today, right? Like obviously the name change, when I seen that come out, it makes sense, right? Like you don't want to, have any copyright issues or be in any legal battles when you don't have to. But the first thing I noticed when I seen, Pink Token and Pink NFTs marketplace was, wow, like, this appeals actually a lot more broader to the investors and it could be spun off so many different ways. So, I guess really, where are we at today with the current project, right? As it moves into Pink Token and, Pink's NFT marketplace, what, does this mean for investors? What exactly is it? How's the project work? Maybe, a really, high level review over what this is now is really what I want to capture.
Josh,
I mean,
I'm thinking maybe that's you.
I think so too. And I'll add some things afterwards. But yeah, Josh, jump in.
I'm so sorry. Could I get the question again, please?
Yeah, no worries. I was just saying, obviously from Pink Panther and the transition to Pink Token and Pink's NFT, right? Just wondering, where we are at today as a project, what investors can expect, what does it all mean, what are the changes, just really a high level like review of the transition, right? From Pink Panther, it's really just a name change, but the scaling mechanisms that are happening now with the NFT marketplace and the general way that I think maybe Pink appeals just as a brand, a way more broad than Pink Panther would. Just really what I'm trying to capture is that where's the current, state of the project? Where are we going? Where's the juicy details? Things like that, right?
Brilliant setup. Thank you. So we have knocked out pretty much all of the problems that tend to tank projects, even outside of DeFi. And Taylor, this coming from private equity. If your co-founders or if the, all of the first few hires or team members or in whatever structure, if the terms are not very explicit, you have something like the social network where everyone's arguing over value that we were supposed to formalize in either in a form of smart contracts or in the form of, democratic agreements between each other. And so we've been putting together the process for voting on decisions like distribution of expenses. And you might imagine from like the Emacs perspective, it's kind of frustrating to watch people just throw money to whomever and that, you know, ends up diluting, right? Because they're not presenting any terms there, and so then they're, you know, a lot of those were just selling instantly and taking the price. So we've been putting together a lot of the processes interpersonally so we can get better at making more decisions faster in the future. And so all of this speaks to the possibility that I think I have just in our Telegram alone probably seen a dozen or so different content creators, whether they're artists or writers, that have all expressed interest in contributing, right? And I think that, you know, like a lot of these other NFT style projects, like even with Loot, right? Like one of the biggest reasons they were able to take off as quickly as they have is by making something that is like platform agnostic, right? So these things are compatible with any other game or platform that chooses to accept, you know, that data structure to present, in this case, like a character or an item, right? And so we think it would be really cool to move towards one of these, and I hate to say metaverse because there's a bunch of other projects that are using that term, and maybe they're like us where they're like super early and just trying to figure it out, which is cool. But anyway, we would love to see a situation where we can start bringing in, you know, other creators and building this really interesting fictional universe, right? And if we think to, you know, basically at like a almost a philosophical level of like what is money or currency, you know, it's a unit of account, it's a store of value, and it's a medium of exchange, right? And what is fascinating and just superb is that we're now at a place of technology where we can just imagine structures of how we pool our value together, and sometimes that value is measured in fiat, right? And sometimes that value is measured in time and effort and relationships. And so we can come together in these structures and these communities around things that we're interested in. We can share our time, our effort, our relationships, and our money, and we can formalize that in these structures of technology that we know as crypto in a way that lets us start rewarding each other for our efforts and bringing people together with a common goal, right? So that's really cool. And so whether that materializes first as, you know, some form of implementation where you can use our website as a layer 2 solution, such as an OpenSea collection where you're not paying any gas or minting, with the exception of like registering or initializing your wallet. That might be a thing that we do, but there's also plenty of other projects that do that, right? And so what I think would be, and this is, you know, my personal opinion, right? But I think it would be much cooler to form relationships with them that have done this engineering and say, how can we add value to you guys, right? How can we, you know, not just incorporate your technology and bring prominence to it, but how can we reach out to many other digital artists? And you know, I'm a musician, right? So even Dink and Savas had mentioned, they dropped me a couple artists to check out, and they were like, maybe you want to do like an 80s style like synth pop soundtrack. And I was like, that actually sounds pretty cool, right? So just building this structure by which people that are interested in things can share their time and share their value is really what crypto should be. And by forming this team process of voting, we have some accountability and transparency in how we go about doing that, and it really prevents, you know, any hard feelings from just misunderstandings, but it also prevents greed, right? It prevents any of us from making decisions in a vacuum, and that's what decentralized organizations can be, right? Is just a collection of people working together towards a common goal and all just getting together to share their votes, right? And so it just happens that, you know, there are some things that are technologically more challenging to flesh out when it's somewhat irreversible the way you do it, and it's easier to just revert to the fact that we all know each other and we've built relationships in this project, and we can trust each other to vote on these things now that we've established these processes. And over time, we can layer on, as much transparency and as much on-chain representation of this as we can, right? But in the meantime, it's like really important to just be blatantly honest with this paradigm that it's never only going to be smart contracts. It's always going to be people behind it, right? And we choose every day, driving on the road or getting an Uber Eats order. Like, we put our trust in so many people all the time, right? And most of the time that trust is merited. And so, there's many things that we need to do better in crypto as a whole. But I also think that starts with like leading by example, and it's forming teams that do the things that they say they're going to do. That was part of what we went through, is like, do we all have team visibility on what gets published, right? Do we all have the opportunity to like review that and weigh on it before it gets published? So that way, like, we're like, for example, we're promising, these different forms of rewards to holders and to, both former holders and those that hold now through the next episode release, right? So it's important for us to all be able to get there, right? Because, so Voss is going to have to take some time and do some of that work there. And like, there's effort that's required. There's gas fees and costs. There's different paths to execute against these strategies, right? So I think it's really, really great, because that's something I really wish everyone would have listened to me on with Emacs, because we wouldn't have had all of that nonsense and all that noise. And I just call it like I see it, right? And so, I think that we have a lot of interesting things that we can do a lot quicker now that we've paved this road, and now it's like, well, let's send some trucks over it, right?
Totally. And it's really cool too, just kind of hearing you explain it with the content creators, these masterminds of digital art and, various walks of life coming all together potentially under Pink's NFT as one ecosystem, right? And being able to leverage that. I mean, it almost sounds like you're breeding as a launch pad in some form or fashion, to me. But just reading through, what I've seen and the changes, I really want to talk also about, Crypto Force, right? Like, that is really interesting, how you can, use our old, the pink tokens. I wouldn't say old, but our pink tokens, and, have certain benefits as these, what you call episodes, roll out. And see, that's something, when I first looked at the project, it caught my attention because it's comic based, right? So there's so many things that you can do with, comics, right? I mean, it could be targeted to any style, demographic, anything, but also inside of the crypto community, it could be really used advantageously in a lot of different ways, I think. And for what you're doing right here in the NFT world, I personally think that there is so many routes that you can go with these episodes, highlighting other NFTs, merging, breeding as a launch pad. And maybe I'm totally wrong, and this is where you tell me, hey, just slow down, or this is what we're doing. But this is what I see. And, it's coming together that way, breeding these folks together, creating this content inside of the Pink's NFT ecosystem, like I'll call it. So it's very interesting to me, that this Crypto Force and the way that it'll work. Now, with that being said, are the episodes timed, or is it kind of just rolled out, when you're ready? Like, what is the time frame typically as you roll out, say, an episode or a series, right, of each comic?
I have to answer that before anyone else does. At least once a month.
Cool. Okay. So quick. And are these going to be targeted to, different style communities? Like, really, what is the target here in terms of these episodes, right? It's Pink based, but each one is different, right? Like, so at a high level, maybe, like, what at a strategical level, I would say, what are your plans in terms of scaling and leveraging, using a comic based platform and an NFT platform as well, going into a marketplace? What strategic thinking is being thought out about when you roll out, you know, these series and these comics, because I just see so many beautiful things that can be done with targeting there, right? And given it's a comic base, whether if it's, you know, political, like for instance, right now we're currently in Capitol Hill in DC against the infrastructure bill. So I mean, you know, cartoons relate directly to political, you know, tie-ins. I mean, there's so many other, you know, examples, but I guess what I'm getting at in terms of the crypto community in general, I feel like you can tie in with so many other NFT communities in general, also
Absolutely.
with crypto projects, right? Like the scaling ability is enormous to me. So I would love to hear, you know, just a little more about that would be, you know, really good for me.
Yeah, no doubt. So I'll field this one first, and then I'm gonna toss it over to Lady Crypto here, right? So the other day, and I'll pitch it to you guys like I pitched it to them. And I know everyone's had kind of a similar idea in some shape or form, but I always thought it would be really cool. Like, I when I was like 12, 13, I read like probably a dozen paperback Star Wars novels because they were like $2 or $3 off of Amazon, right? And so then at some point I decided to like look up like, oh, like how does it work like this? Because I was on a wiki and then I learned about like canon versus non-canon, right? Where like canon means it's like officially a part of, you know, like the series or the franchise or whatever the frame. And then non-canon is just like fan fiction, right? But then it turns out the line is actually kind of blurred. And so like I read this like multiple book series that was just, I think, I don't know, however many thousands of years after the, you know, the main 6 movies. And so I just thought it was so interesting thinking throughout my life, the concept that, you know, sometimes you can design and write a narrative and describe a realm that's so compelling that many other people wish to write their versions or to like imagine their place in this realm, right? And so we would love to do something similar, which would be like, imagine that, you know, other artists and writers could like pitch their character, right? And then if that had enough, for example, maybe it was like, there's so many different ways that we could formalize it. But if there, I don't know, maybe it's voting, maybe I really don't know, right? But let's just say, I'll just imaginary example here. You know, we take 3 like new character submissions a month, and then whoever has the most votes from holders of pink, for example, we'll have that character like introduced into the narrative, right? And so when I was bringing this up, the guys told me that Stan Lee actually did something similar, where like originally he had introduced Spider-Man as like a one-off, and then everyone was like, oh, like, where's Spider-Man? When is Spider-Man coming back up? And then so it's like, it turns out that's actually, you know, that has tended to be how some of this has already played out, right? It's like we want to be able to build this narrative interactively. And so, Taylor, when you speak to the interoperability and the potential for collaboration with all these other projects, I mean, it's literally endless, right? It is like as many things as we can think of, and then the time in which to do it, right? And so it happens that investment gives us more resources to be able to extend that reach faster. And at the same time, there's, you know, we need to have a fair amount of creative liberty here so we can let the people that have really imagined this universe at least see enough of that vision so we can experience it and look at it from their perspective, right? And then as that just naturally grows, I think all of these opportunities will just organically present themselves, and we'll just have a lot of fun with it, right? And there's no need to be like super secretive, because I think those secrets are going to be, you know, the like the drop-offs and the plot twists that come in the narrative itself, right? So let's just do business in a fun way that engages everybody. And now it's Lady Crypto's turn.
How do I follow that? I should have went first. I'm not sure what to add to that other than, I've been spending a lot of time personally in Clubhouse groups and Twitter spaces, just speaking to artists, not even as speaking necessarily to people in this space, but speaking to artists, speaking to people in the comic world, speaking to other people in the NFT space, and discussing this project, getting thoughts from other artists. And to what Josh just said, the question that I get the most from other artists is, ooh, this sounds very cool. Will there be opportunities for other artists to collaborate or to guest, to be a guest contributor, or how can we get involved? So that is 100% of the time the question that gets asked by all these people in this space, many of which are not necessarily in the crypto space. So one of the things I can say that I've been working on is trying to figure out from an education standpoint and in some videos on how to make it easy to sort of bridge the gap between the people who want to be involved in this project. And this comic is definitely written by someone who writes comics, and it's being illustrated by someone who illustrates comics for a living. So this is something that's going to be amazing and appealing to not just the comic space, but like the NFT space and the crypto space, because of the subject. The subject is what's happening in today's times. It's crypto force, and it is going to follow the timeline of current events in a way. And so there's going to be a large percentage of people who have not stepped foot in the crypto space yet, who want to and might be afraid to. So one of the things we're definitely going to do is to try and help bridge that gap, bring those people over, and use some old school marketing techniques to appeal to those audiences to get them over here. And I think once people start to get emotionally connected to the comic, that is what will foster the other relationships of collaboration. And to what Josh said, it's endless, not just artists, but collaborating with other token projects, potentially working their story in. I mean, there's so many ways this can go, that it is really kind of endless. And the community makes amazing suggestions too. I mean, a conversation with the community is how this comic spawned to begin with. So I'm very excited about what is to come, and the comic itself is going to be absolutely amazing. You have people who have been doing this for years, and I know Dink said this already, but he has connections in the industry who are going to be making contributions from Marvel Comics. I mean, we have someone from Marvel that's going to be doing our cover, and he's got connections with DC and all of these other things. I mean, he works in the movie industry. So go ahead, Dink.
It's the current artist who draw Loki covers, the main Loki covers right now.
Right, yeah. So the artist, the guy doing our cover, is right now working on Loki for Netflix. I mean, this is big stuff. So, I think nobody really knows any of this yet. And I think once these things become a little more known and people start to see what's really happening, I think the sky is really the limit for us.
Absolutely, and just thinking and hearing it from your team, and that obviously I always say coming from PE, it's one of those things for me where I'm always really focused on the team primarily when I invest, right? But then also the project at the same time, or the company. And when I look at a company like this that can expand and scale into endless streams of revenue, given that it's crypto and this whole NFT realm that we're entering, and you creating an ecosystem that will be breeding really these, fabulous people that put these together, and having that firepower from DC and Marvel, that's like an explosion going off in my brain. So I love it. So to hone in more about the marketplace, this is completely separate, right, from the token. So as you move in, to what I would say phase one is really what you have on your roadmap, right? And that's getting everything designed. I mean, how far are you through that roadmap right now, and what is kind of the runway to completion? What would you say?
I don't know who wants to take that one. You want to take that one, Dream, or do you want me to? Or John?
Yeah. I'll take this one.
Great.
Okay. So I'm gonna step back a little bit to something that I'm sure all of us have seen posted in a Telegram, even on day one of a token launch. And that's something that you always see posted is when marketing, right? So we've consistently told people, we said, listen, we're not going to market, we're not going to have paid shillers, and we're not going to do paid marketing until the time is right. And we kept saying that. And as the project evolved, we said, well, you know what? That's not what we need to do first. We have some built-in organic marketing, which is a large part is Dink's, professional network. Right on our website, if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see his profile, and those are all that is his actual identity. So once we have this first episode 0 ready to go and we can release it, things like that, he'll start sharing that on his professional network. And that's really going to bring in a lot of people. It kind of ties into what Lady Crypto was saying about how we plan on having a lot of first timers in crypto. They're going to come for the comic, but by the time they're done, they're going to at least know something about crypto. And so that really is the first step, right? We're driving full speed towards that. We had some organization to go through, which Josh, of course, helped us with. And, now that that's set, it's been full speed towards episode 0. Once that first comic is established and released, then we can start to think about, more about the marketplace and these other things that we're talking about. And like you said, Taylor, there's so many things you can do with this. And to say that we have a list that's written in stone right now, well, that's not so. There are a lot of ideas, because there are so many ways to capitalize on this and expand. So, and that'll come with time as people come. We'll find exactly which path is the most important, anyways. We've got engineers and we've got artists. We've got a lot of engineers and a lot of artists on the team. So you can imagine we have no shortage of creativity, which is where I think that voting will come in. But also, and not only just on the team, but on the community side as well. So just to sum that up, it's fast forward, or sorry, not fast forward, but full steam ahead to episode 0. And then from there, creating the NFTs based off of episode 0, building that hype, building the catalog, so to speak. And that's what will establish the marketplace at first. Just Pink to develop that foundation. And then from there, we'll expand. And, really it gives other artists a chance to create, instead of just creating a fan art or something for themselves, now they'll have a voice and a stage to kind of, create these side stories and different things that they can, come to our site and almost pitch, right? We will be having a Discord server. The team has been using one, for our back end organization for a while now, and we just got to put some finishing touches on the public side. And, that'll probably be the main area where other possible contributors can come and share.
It seems, Discord is really the kind of like Telegram has been really the foundation of DeFi and crypto, of Twitter, right? Obviously, those two kind of stick out the most, but it seems to me, in the NFT world, it's really Discord centric, right? That was a question.
Yes. Yes. No, in the NFT world, it very much is. And I think probably at least some of you here, right, that have been looking at NFTs, they, they may have a Discord and not even have a Telegram. And, when I first got started with cryptocurrency, it was like, you got to get on this thing called Telegram. And I said, oh, what is this? And I got to tell you, being that, listen, I was one of those people, right? Shiba Inu was my first coin. And getting in these telegrams and seeing things fly by, a mile in a minute. I looked at this and I said, man, maybe I'm getting old because I'm not getting much out of this besides that I see there's a lot of activity. And again, people come into Telegram and they say, we need hype, we need pictures, we need this, and if things aren't flying by to the point where you can't read them, people almost get a bad idea about the project. And that's one reason why I really like Discord. I mean, also I'm an engineer, right? So I like organizing things. I like having my buckets to put things in. And that's the nice thing about Discord. It's a good repository of information versus, a vomiting of sometimes meaningless data flying in front of your eyes. Your time's more spent, I think. Discord is better for consuming data, while understanding it, not just consuming it. That's what I was trying to say.
And also the reaching, right? Like you want to have these platforms set in place as you enter, because attracting these folks and these creators, they're really going to be attracted to what platform they're familiar with. So like, for example, with the Angels, like it's not just Telegram. We have Slack, with Discord, Clubhouse. Like there's so many different platforms that people are on that they're used to and they engage with. So the NFT world, knowing that it's been Discord centric from my due diligence personally and just projects that we've looked at, it seems like that's a great idea to establish there, really explain what you're doing and attract those folks in, because they will come. And and what you're building, it seems to me like a ecosystem for a launch pad of people to come and, just like you said, pitch ideas and really buy into this comic series and this universe, and like we've all been saying, can keep spinning off in so many ways, and appeal to so many different coins, and probably even help some of the coins out there in their current life cycle, right? So I think that's all really cool stuff. So to the meat and really the gravy part, I know that there was 100 trillion tokens were a minute, right? So maybe talking a little around the tokenomics, and for folks that don't know tokenomics that are listening, maybe that is the economics of, the project itself, the way it works, the finance side. So for folks out there that, do invest into Pink, how does that work, right? Like, how does the Pink project make money? We all know, we have to make money. That's the way that we scale. So where is that being taken? So investors can, understand that, where do the funds go? How are they distributed? And then, maybe after that, what can investors something to look forward to coming up, aside maybe from this huge NFT marketplace, which is great, but I'm sure that you have to have announcements, something in the line for investors. So I'm just really wanting to dive in and look at the economics of the project, the way that the money moves, and then move into the investment side, right, for us as investors. Because I will tell you, we have been all over NFTs. We can't seem to get the right ones, or get in time because it sells out so quick. But we're very novice to the NFT world. And I think a lot of the crypto community is in ways, right? It seems, it's growing obviously, but I certainly don't know the ins and outs of the NFT. So treat me like a novice investor as we talk about these things and us, because we truly are. And it's something that is so popular right now, and it's happening. It's another realm of a world where it's digital art at the end of the day, right? So then you go from print and you go to digital, it's almost the exact same thing. So, even people subscribing to comics and so forth and thereon, it's wild to me. I love it. And I keep brainstorming and rambling at this point, but please let's talk about the tokenomics, the economics of the project. Yeah.
So I'm hoping that Josh maybe can speak to the economics of the project. I do want to say I have two pretty cool announcements at the end of this, so I can take it from there. But Josh, are you able to speak on some of the economics of the project? Or
gladly.
Great.
And as usual, I'll start with the broader frame, which is that, and mind you, this is both my personal opinion and speculation, but I strongly believe that a significant amount of sales and trading volume in a lot of NFTs has just become another, essentially another speculation market or prediction market that is very easily manipulated. And so I'll describe to you in 15 seconds. Hey, I list up an NFT. I buy it from myself 5 times. Sure, I pay gas each time, but I listed it up for 5K, right? I listed up for like 1.5 ETH or something. So then I pay what, 40, 50, 60 bucks each time I buy it from myself. And then, all right. And then the 2.5% fee, okay, it goes to OpenSea, right? What does that mean when you look at it in a chart? Oh, wow. Everyone's bidding on this. Everyone's buying this, right? I've watched 2 different people in the last week build OpenSea listing bots just to take advantage of their collections feature. And not to mention that NFTs for now, who knows when it's going to change, but for now, they're in this comfortable gray area where they're not yet treated as a commodity or as a security. The asset class is not fully established, so it is a very lucrative and easy model for money laundering. So I hate to be the naysayer in what is really going to be the bedrock of the next 10 years of web development, but where it is right now is fairly unscrupulous. And so I would just be hesitant, right? It doesn't mean you can't make money in these pumps, but it's hard for me at least to look at, a 10,000 deep series of programmatic art that are all variations of the same thing and be like, why does this represent $300 million of value? When in fact, in the same way, we're like, you can list up a quadrillion of your own token, and then you can buy back, 999 billion from yourself, and all you're out is some of these fees. Now anyone that buys up that billion, right? Like they think that they're getting, anyway. So lowering down to our economics, they're pretty bare bones right now, right? Because it's brand new, right? This is like literally episode 0. And I think what we're aiming to do is find multiple paths for supporting us, for working with other communities, and also speculating on price, right? So, you can acquire the pink token, and we haven't released episode 0. So the disclaimer, right, is that if you're holding, did we say the number was 1 billion or 10 billion? It was whatever.
10
billion.
Roughly $140 right now.
Yeah. Oh man, we're up again, aren't we? Huh.
Had some sales.
So yeah, if you hold more than 10 billion, starting prior to episode 0's release, and you hold it through episode 1, we're going to give you a copy of episode 0 for free, right? Instead of you buying it. So I think what this lets us do is like, hey, if you want to invest in the project, even if it's just a nominal sum, and you believe that we're going to do some cool shit, totally buy some pink, right? Because, you know, otherwise you could buy the NFT, but you're going to get it as a reward for holding, right? So at the same time, I don't buy a lot of tokens. I really don't. I don't have time to look at charts. You guys know me, I'm sure. Like, I look at things at this like 10-year level, and so I know so many of these thousands, who all these different random projects are gonna eventually fizzle or assimilate. And it's not always the token that matters, it's the people and what they're making, right? And so if you want to come in and you pick up the NFT, now you've got a tokenized representation that, like, it's a first edition or a 0th edition, right? So it's very similar to like anybody that's picking up the first release of anything else. So this is kind of our early path to, like, you know, how do we set a couple different options for the different types of people that might be jumping into this sector, right? And so what we want to do over time is find other ways of engaging other NFT communities and figuring out, you know, do we want to do joint events? Do we want to do, hey, if you're holding both pink and this other token, you get a special limited edition of, you know, some new thing. But those are all just different forms of incentive and reward structures that just surround the fact that fundamentally, you know, this is a creative project with the output of content and value that is as interesting and fun, right? So we can editorialize and dance around all of these different dollar variables. But at a certain point, it's like, well, Marvel is guaranteed to make $1 billion on a new movie release. And so, yeah, they have to put in hundreds of millions into everything, but they're basically guaranteed that, right, at a certain level of distribution. And I would like to think that, you know, there are forms of momentum in compelling narratives that just almost certainly guarantee that it's going to grow, right? Like I was what, 12 or 13 years old when the first Marvel movie Iron Man came out, right? And 2 days later, I had built a like wrist mounted flamethrower, and no exaggeration, it was starter fluid and then like a little plastic tubing running up my arm, and then like a little servo motor on the back of my hand that would or excuse me, like a little switch that would activate a servo motor that pressed down on the lighter fluid lid. And then I just took out the little clicky thing from like a long nose lighter. It's not safe at all, but that was like that movie. Because I never grew up with comic books, right? I grew up the digital age. That movie set me on the path that has led me to here, right? And you guys would not believe some of the things that I've been privileged to know about and get to work on as a result of these types of communities that we're building, right? So, you know, there is absolutely an element of potential volatility here, as in you never know when something's going to go viral, right? And it's very infrequently the first time, right? It's very unlikely it's going to be the first thing. But what you do is you come up with a formula, right? Which is why every Marvel movie eventually kind of seems the same. And it still makes $1 billion. And so we would love to come up with a formula that makes an interesting thing each time, involving new people and injecting new liquidity from the engagement of these new partners in a way that fundamentally is something that we get to create and enjoy together. It's not just vaporware. I hope that does enough to sum it up.
Absolutely. I totally get it. And it's just really fascinating to me, the way that we can migrate out. It's been historically repeated in so many different industries. And you look at, the growth of social media and the way that it's put out, papers and different things. This is the same type of movement. And you can look at other subsectors of different areas that can leverage the NFT marketplace to cut out middlemen, agents, different ways to, promote yourself, maybe, right? If you're a figure of status. So, I mean, there's so many really cool ways that it can be leveraged and also looked at the moment. So, I want to circle back to what you said, though. And it's something that I've been eyeing in the NFT space, and I couldn't really wrap my head around it. And then you said it, and it makes a lot of sense. But with the money laundering situation, do you see any? I mean, obviously, regulation is always a topic. It's very unlikely, right? You have to shut down the internet to some capacity, which is practically impossible. But how could that be monitored? How could it affect? Just as an investor, right? Being in, any crypto is, very volatile. You have to have that thick skin. But, moving into the NFT world where these things are pretty much explicitly happening. I mean, I can't fathom paying, a couple $1,000,000 for a picture of a rock, but somebody did, right? So, what does that mean for the NFT space in the future? And I don't think it's an end to anything, because you can look in the early stages of Bitcoin and probably still today at some things that went on and that go on, and and here we are. It's a digital asset in today's world, classified by the government when they talk on the news. That's a big statement to say that these are digital assets, meaning asset. To say that word means a lot, and what's propelled me mostly into what I would call my crypto career now. But in terms of NFTs, is there anything for us to worry about? Backlash, anything? That is really my biggest question, and around that, and what could we do to potentially bring something there to stop those kind of things, right? Or do we just let it happen? I'm really wanting to learn more, not about the money laundering, but with that happening, what to expect, and maybe what an investor should think in that situation. Okay.
So I don't know whether it's 6 months, 18 months, but it's definitely less than 3 years. There are going to be likely a couple of precedent-setting cases, and from a legal perspective. So I have now in network some really best in class both securities attorneys and like fintech attorneys that specialize in blockchain, right? So I have the benefit of like getting to pick their brain about different things here, and so it's a fairly commonly held belief that like sometime over the next 18 to 36 months, there will be a couple precedent setting cases that add more distinction between forms of digital assets, because an NFT can equally be like, for example, what are referred to as like asset-backed tokens, right? And so what that would mean is essentially like, when you go and you buy a commodity, you're not physically buying entitlement to like go and pick up a 40-gallon barrel of oil. You're buying the representation of it, but it must, there is a regulatory body that establishes the relationship between that derivative, that commodity, and the underlying asset itself, right? And even in the traditional financial infrastructure, as we've seen with GameStop and Robinhood and everything else, there is an enormous amount of inefficiency and black boxes, which we can realistically assumed to be a lot of corruption. Anyway, so sometime in the the not so distant future, they might be scapegoats. It might be initiated by the SEC. It might be initiated by like the IRS's criminal division in context with money laundering or tax evasion, or it could very well be a civil case or a series of civil cases, where, for example, you have an entity or a collection of entities that in whatever ways have wronged people or are alleged to have wronged people. And then, some type of, like, for example, a class action is brought against a civil group, but then that gets appealed. And then, eventually it makes it to, like, a circuit court. So that's what I mean by precedent setting decision. Right. And so we don't really know what's going to happen. And so, like, bear in mind, like, I'm obviously not an attorney, but I'm very well versed in what legalese, right? Because it's a language like anything else, and it is not that dissimilar from code, right? It just so happens that just like there's different coding languages that are all object oriented, and so each of them have the same types of patterns. So you can go and you can do hello world pretty identically in C++ or JavaScript or Python or Haskell or so then the compiler is responsible for interpreting that into assembly or bytecode. And so in the same way, legal language is often subject to that same discrepancy in interpretation, right? Which is why there is always a degree of nuance in these legal standards. And so how that is relevant to your question and us today, whether you have a collection of NFTs or have never bought one before, I think the future is a lot more interesting for NFTs, right? I really do. For just a litany of reasons. And so you can think of very simple ones as, like, for example, participation trophies. Like think about this, right? You want to have like a digital movie launch, but you don't want to have to launch it in any of the platforms, right? So you don't want to put it on YouTube because then anyone just get it there, right? So you could have like an NFT ticket. All right, well, that's pretty straightforward, right? That kind of makes sense. Nothing really novel about that. But think about this, right? Remember, what you can do with crypto is you can attach signatures to things, right? You can attach additional data. So now imagine that you have, like, the director and the lead actor and actress, and they all digitally sign your NFT ticket, right? It's literally like keeping your ticket stub at the premiere. And by the way, I'm not really a sentimental guy, but I still have that Iron Man ticket stub from, like, what is that now? 14 years ago, right? It's not signed by Robert Downey Jr., but if it was, that'd be pretty freaking cool. And so we have the ability to do the digital equivalent of this kind of like now, right? Like, these technologies exist, and it's just up to people to string them together and other people to spread the word, right? But you can get far more technical, which is, some of these other projects that I can't speak to because some of them, like, seriously have some fascinating and, like, military industrial complex level ramifications to them, right? But I'll just say that the ability to represent a dimensional model of data in a digital format and have it licensed in what's known as a zero knowledge proof, right? And so there's a couple different ways of doing this. The one I'm more familiar with is called a ZK snark, which is like a zero knowledge succinct argument of, or zero. Okay, I forgot the acronym. Anyway, getting off target here. Imagine, for example, right, like, how do you beat Google or Apple at smartphones, or how do you beat them at at like cloud photo storage, right? And so, in fact, I've studied this for like 7 or 8 years. And so in business, you have this concept called feature parity, which basically means, does your stuff do the same stuff as the other guys? And so one of the main reasons that like Google and Apple have just basically absolute dominance on like personal cloud photo storage, and obviously like Facebook being a close third, right? Is because they have these gigantic swaths of data, and then they can use all of that data to more effectively train their neural networks. And so basic features like facial recognition, and then being able to be like, yeah, here are your moments with different family members. Like that's just something it's miraculous, but we kind of all just take it for granted now, right? And so if we wanted to build an open source equivalent, right? If we wanted to build a tool based on like, for example, IPFS, where iCloud or Google can't just like say, hey, we're going to implement this algorithm that, hashes all of your stuff and looks for, inappropriate things, right? They refer to it as what is it, CSAM, and yeah, child sexual abuse material. So that was a big controversy with Apple over the past month, and Google has implemented similar measures. So there was this. I'm getting super long-winded, but I promise I'm gonna wrap it up soon. So like 3 weeks ago, there was a published proof of what's called a hash collision, right? So the simplified version here is that Apple was like, hey, we have, hundreds of thousands of like just terrible images of children. And so we have them from like a couple different databases like the FBI. And so we're going to do math, and then, the output will be, a bunch of math, that's like math versions of the characteristics of these terrible images, right? And then, hey, we're going to do that with all images in iCloud. And then if the math is exact with each other, well, that's like what they claim. Apple's paper on this claims it's like 1 in 100 trillion, I think, or whatever they say. It's like just incredibly unlikely that this math would ever be an exact match with something, another image that's not this actual other image, right? So their claim is, hey, that doesn't let us just look at all your photos all of the time, and it mathematically compares them to where they're identical in theory, to the hash of like the terrible images databases that they have, right? And so a couple of weeks ago, what was reported, and I went and I literally like looked through the code, and I can link it to you guys on GitHub, is that like a security researcher, like a couple days after the announcement, was like, hey, here's how you can take a random image and you can generate a hash collision, which means that, 1 in 100 trillion that Apple claimed, or 1 in 10 trillion, whatever it was, like the dude was able to just start creating them at whim, right? So no exaggeration. What that means is I could go and I could take a meme, right? And in theory, right? Because it's about the math, but in theory, the progression of this is I could take this meme and I could transform it millions of times until eventually that math looks identical to the algorithm as the math or the hash of this terrible image. So I could text you a meme, you save it to your iCloud, your phone gets flagged for child pornography, and then they shut down all of your stuff, right? That's a real thing that could happen at any time, with an iPhone and Google, right? And there's just all kinds of other things. So if we're ever going to build something that's an open source equivalent, where we don't have to trust one of these platforms to hold safely all of our memories, and we want to be able to have the same features, that means that people need to be able to contribute their data to a central structure where people can build those open source features, but they need to be able to do it in a way that doesn't reveal all your personal information, right? So that's what a zero knowledge proof is. And there's a fair amount of like well-established research, and there's a lot more ongoing. And so think that, like, no exaggeration, there are things that can happen in the next 6 months, in the next year, that's like, hey, here's cloud storage. Like, you know, the Brave browser, how it like, I have some opinions about Brave, but like, hey, their claim is like, use us, and then, we're going to block some ads. Excuse me, we're going to show you a few different targeted things, and then we're going to reward you with a token for using this, right, as a part of that. So there are possible things where it's like, hey, here's cloud storage. You pay Apple $10, pay us 15, but if you let us do math and hash all of your images so we can build better open source facial recognition, then you get that reimbursed every month in the form of an NFT. And, you can sell that NFT, but like, imagine a year later, this software is, way bigger, right? Then all of a sudden they could flip it and they could say, hey, now this NFT that only had, 100,000 or so in circulation, all of our early users, now that is the only way you can use this software, right? Or like that's one of the ways, or here's the new one, but it's more expensive. And so this is almost like, if you bought like a lifetime membership somewhere, right? So anytime, if you've ever bought software where it's like, hey, you can buy it like monthly or yearly. If you buy it yearly, you get a discount, or you could buy it like lifetime. It's way more, but then you get all of the updates, right? Like NFTs and just the concept of a decentralized structure of consensus in general, like I could go on all night and through tomorrow and forever, right? Because anything that you can imagine can now be structured in a way that everyone can see how it is. And so it's like, that doesn't mean we don't have to trust each other anymore. It just means we eliminate so many situations that we might have not been clear on because they must be structured with math and code, right? So, like I said, I'll go on forever. I don't even remember what the original prop was.
No, you're fine. And we were really just talking about, the way the NFTs were being used and different, ways that it can be looked at. And you answered everything and beyond. I thought it was absolutely extraordinary. And I just love listening most of the time. I'm that guy that likes to be quiet, but I soak everything in. And everything you just said, it helps me, look at the NFT and the future of it. So thank you, so much for that. I mean, I would love to, hop in the pink NFT channel and just hang out sometime and really listen and learn more, as I'm so fascinated with this market and the NFT world. But like you said, the imaginary part, right? Like the fact that we can imagine anything and put it into this, metaverse is what we'll call it, the NFT place, the world there. It's really extraordinary. And I think that there's a lot of legs there to grow on. So as an investor, obviously, it's something I'm very keen on looking in and doing more due diligence on. But, having this in-house, with what was Pink Panther and now turning into this, it's just so great. And I'm truly excited. I normally have, a ton of questions, but I truly don't tonight. I think, Josh, Samantha, everybody, you've answered my questions throughout just your verbiage with everything and your statements. So I just want to thank you. But at the same time, on these calls, I do like to open the floor up for our core team members to call to ask questions. And then also, if anybody else is on the call that is on mute, feel free to write your question in the chat and I can ask it for you. And then in closing, Samantha, if you want, you can leave us those two little announcements as we part ways after. Does that sound fair?
Sure, I will hold on to my announcements until the end.
Keep your bullets in the gun right now. I know you're getting ready.
I was like, oh, I'm ready.
Yeah,
Let me go.
I heard my own echo. I was like, oh wow, she's getting ready.
Fire, I'm on fire.
Yeah,
Pumped
no,
up.
absolutely. I got it.
Hey,
Okay.
I do have one important public service announcement because I know some people are looking to buy. Just make sure that you do use the contract from the Pink Telegram or go through the website. There are a few other coins out there, and one of them does start with Pink. It's a coin that will get you in trouble. Let's just put it that way. We've been confused with it in the past. It's called Pink Protocol. Do not touch that thing. You do not want to own that. So that's all.
Also, if anyone's having trouble, just make sure your however many tokens you're buying end the last digit with a 1. Sometimes people have trouble getting their tokens through, and that is the fix for that.
Always the 111 trick, I think, should be highlighted. So yeah, if it works, that's great. I've also dropped the Dex Tools link directly in our chat here, and then any investors that may be listening to this, you always want to be very vigilant on what you're buying, even when you type in a name, search anything. You want to pay attention to code. So I would highly suggest and recommend folks to join the Pink's NFT Telegram, which we can provide that, and it will be listed on wherever you're viewing this at the moment. So with that being said, I would like to move into questions. So, is anybody on our core team want to start by chance?
I have a question, and hi guys. I first want to say I'm so excited that this AMA happened. And for those of you who don't know, I know this team very, very, very well. This is probably one of the most honest and genuine groups of people that I've, aside from a DeFi Angels, of course, but like as like a token dev team or creator team, I should say. They're just, you guys are awesome, very genuine, very legit. You guys do what you say you need to do. I've seen everybody's face. I know all of your names. They're very open, and I'm very excited that we got to do this. So I just wanted to
We love you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. But I had a question, and I know a lot of people have been asking this throughout the day, and you guys mentioned about the giveaway, the NFT giveaway a couple of days ago. If you could just expand on that, I think that might help answer some questions that I've seen.
Sure. So basically, what we are offering is, the first 100 holders who bought in on the coin at the beginning and have been so patiently holding without selling, those first 100 people are going to be receiving a NFT of episode 0. They will be eligible to receive that. And then anyone who makes a purchase of Pink tokens before we launch our episode 0 and holds and does not sell any tokens through when episode 1 launches will also be eligible to for a free NFT of episode 0 as well. Right now is the perfect time to get in. I mean, I think Josh said the cost of the NFTs in the future, we don't necessarily know for sure, but right now 10 billion tokens is only about $140. So you see out there already NFTs flying for much larger prices than that. So it's a good opportunity to get in on a cool token that will also give you other benefits in the future as well, not just your NFT. And not financial advice, but potentially could go up and make money.
And just to expand on that just a little bit, there'll be 4, possibly 5 variants of this episode 0 NFT. And it's not going to be just a picture. It's actually going to be the entire comic.
Well, not 5 variances of the comic though. I think they're gonna get confused.
No. Not 5 variants of. Yeah, there's not going to be 5 different stories.
You almost just gave Dink a heart attack.
I'm dying over here.
Oh, did we forget to tell you that, Dink? So no, but what I was going to say is, a lot of projects, right? They'll have different variants. The background color is a little bit different, or there's something that's just a little bit different. So there'll be 4, possibly 5 of these. So the holders that have held the longest and never sold, that's going to be that first 100. And those will be, a bit more rare. But then the holders, the people that buy, before the drop of episode 0, which of course is very, very close, they're going to get a different variant. And I have a feeling it's going to be more than 100 because of the people that are holding. And then there'll be another variant that's sold only on OpenSeas, starting with that in Ethereum, platform that everybody knows. And then there'll possibly be 1 or 2 more. But that's how we'll kind of differentiate the the rarity of the different variants, as I'm calling them. And the really cool thing is that down the line there are platforms that are already available where if we decide to say, okay, if somebody owns the different variants, if you own all 4 different variants or whatever, how many there are, there's something special that you can get access to, or there's something special that you can get. So I just wanted to explain that a little bit. We hadn't gone into that yet.
And I saw here there's a question in chat that, Taylor, I don't know if you had mentioned it yet. The question is,
yeah, I was going to ask it. Yeah, it's kind of a 2-piece question, right? He just wants to know, one of our investor members, really the goals for the Pink Panther project moving forward in terms of, holders of the coin, as well as the market cap, and then furthermore, maybe the subscribers for the comic series, right?
Fascinating. Yeah. So first, I think that there is a pretty common misconception, particularly in crypto, with how the market cap is calculated and how, like, for example, on Dex tools, it's like the diluted market cap. So that's calculated in a couple different ways. So if you go on like Coin Market Cap into their I think their docs or their methodology, they show how they're doing that calculation. I'm sure Dex has something there too. Typically, most of these platforms will show how they're arriving at that. And usually diluted takes into account the burn, which I'm pretty sure they burned a substantial portion. I don't remember the number, right? Market cap
76%.
76%. Yeah. So the diluted market cap is basically of that remaining 24%. What is the multiplier of like the circulation and trading in the price pair on whatever exchange? So in our case, Uniswap, and relative to all of the possible tokens in that project, taking into account the burn, right? I like in most crypto projects, whether they're multi-billion or micro cap, I often find market cap to be a fairly meaningless metric to measure anything by. And so I could dive into that, but rather I would like to speak to the other piece of that, which is the holders of the coin, right? Which is, I think, in our case, a very cool metric that we can improve on, right? So that's certainly something that you can look to as an example of growth, but remember that it is not our only metric of audience and user base, right? Because you can acquire this NFT directly without purchasing Pink, right? Although we believe it's, you know, a more cost-effective route to buy Pink and hold, entitling you to this NFT, right? Because if you think about it, you're going to spend more money on buying it and then the gas to buy it off of OpenSea than just buying $100 or so, $150 of Pink and holding it for a month, right? So, because I've thought a lot about how could you do like a reverse kind of subscription model, right? Or like a DeFi subscription model in the same way that, you know, you sign up for Spotify or Netflix or any of these other subscription models, because that's just the way of SaaS, or the way of, you know, Patreon, right? There's all kinds of different ways of subscribing to something, and that is a proven economic model, right? But it's a little bit more difficult to do that because it's not cost effective to bill somebody 10 or 20 or $30 a month against their wallet when the nature of crypto is like you got to go in and off that, right? And you got to build that authority, and then, you know, if the gas is going to be, you know, 70, 80, 100% of whatever your subscription cost, then that's not cost effective. So that's what we're trying to do here, an experiment with, hey, if you hold Pink, it's kind of like, because, like, you know, that money's liquid, right? So you can withdraw that, and then, you know, if you just wanted to hold $100 or $150 or whatever of Pink, get your episode 0 and sell it, like you it's a free market. You were entitled to do that. And I will speculate that more people than not will continue to hold it in the same kind of way that you don't cancel your Netflix subscription, even if you didn't watch anything on Netflix in a few weeks, because it's possible that they come out with something like Queen's Gambit, which is like the only Netflix thing that I've watched like in like 7 or 8 months. And it was so worth it to keep my Netflix subscription, right? Also because, like, you know, family watches the Netflix. But so that's kind of what our experiment is there, is to entice holders with material incentives in the same way that they would like pay for those as a subscription, because it's just not cost effective to do a, you know, like a monthly subscription or billable model. And so what we learn from this experiment through the release, and ongoing strategy and brainstorming will kind of guide the different things that we can do in the future, and we'll just get more refined. You know, we'll have more data to interpret and action on. And I'm always a big fan of, like, you know, just doing like grassroots outreach, right? So I'm so into something along the lines of, like, you know, sometime in the next couple of weeks or month, let's see how many holders we can get to like send an inconsequential sum as a vote to something, right? So imagine we've got, like, you know, like we were saying, like, hey, we got three characters that were introduced in an episode, right? And it's like, hey, we're gonna write about all of these characters because each of them are integral to like the overarching narrative. But one of them can come first, right? So let's vote. Here is one address, here is a second address, and here is a third address. If you want character A, you know, send a $1 transaction, or a 1,000 Pink transaction, right? So they're just like a 1 cent transaction to address 1. That's a vote for address A, or for character A, you know, and then 2 and 3, right? And so then if we look at that and we see, hey, we only have 350 or 60 holders. So we put this vote out. Hey, there's a time frame. We got 1 week, right? And by the end of that week, we see that there are 300 votes. That means we've got 300 out of 360 as an engagement, right? Which I want to say is what, like 85, 84%? Yeah, something awesome. So experiments like that are an intersection between data collection, democracy, holder and investor and team, or whatever, just community engagement, and interaction with a narrative. Like, that's a pretty cool intersection, right? There's just a lot of things there, and this is like brand new. So yeah, and then it's relatively trivial to it's basically just some very simple data analysis to identify unique votes, right? So like if someone sent, a vote to each address, right? In those three, well, we would be able to identify it because it would originate from the same address. And if they put one or two in between, we would still be able to identify, hey, they sent it to that address and then the other address. And that's like, I've already done that on other projects. So, I consider that to be the verification there to be trivial. But yeah, right. Like, so you see what I'm getting at, which is, the engagement and the growth of that holder metric are important. And equally so are the less quantifiable characteristics of momentum, which is just like, do you guys like it? Are you into the series? And so we could say to some extent that will be represented with the metrics. But the difference between like, a thumbs up and a fire and a rocket and like several walls of text and reposting it to all your social, right? Like that's a big difference. And so we're going to be like, I am a very data-driven guy, and I have all kinds of backgrounds in different dimensions, including like enterprise marketing, right? So, just keeping an eye on all of that and using it to guide how we make other strategic decisions. Also, thank you, CD. I see I've been a holder since May 31st. Hell yeah. Anyway, so just these are some of the reasoning, I suppose, some of the reasoning that we have really been dissecting early on, because once you get all of this groundwork out of the way, then you can just run, right? Like you're not getting bogged down. We're not having to like resolve disputes. We're just getting to make new stuff and experiment and have fun, right? Which is really like, in the end, that's the biggest reason I'm a part of this project, is because it's just fun. It's exciting. I miss the feeling of being excited when a new Marvel movie came out. I am really just like disenfranchised with that. And this is now something I get to like impact here. I can touch it. And how cool would it be if we can give that feeling to others, right? And if that represents itself as metrics, then that's an investable metric, in my opinion.
Totally following you. And I think also what really sticks out to me, being able to use the pink tokens to be more involved and to speak more about the community there and building that organic engagement is second to none. And I'll tell you that firsthand. Whenever you can tie in with the community and get that engagement going and have a use case like that and people interacting with each other, there's nothing more powerful than that, bringing people together. So, what you're doing, I love it. And, I love listening to it. It's fabulous. So, with that being said, does anybody on our core team or in the chat maybe have, any more questions for the team here at Pink's NFT, or?
Or
I-
Sam just.
Oh, go ahead. Did somebody else have something to say? I don't want to interrupt. You could go first if you had a question.
I was just gonna ask about the development of the portal/marketplace. How soon can we expect an update on that?
Okay, I'll jump in here.
Uh,
We don't know. Let me put it like this, right? It can be done in less than a month, right? That is knowable. right? And we have already done a fair amount of the research and the work and fostered some relationships with some layer 2s that would let us get there. And it's a question whether or not that is something to prioritize next week, the week after, or etc. Right? Because right now, episode 0 is certainly like it is the first test, right? If we think of all of this as an experiment. And I am just really excited to see what happens, right? Because I know something will happen. And so it could be that all of the things that happen provide us with the resources where we can start work on that immediately and deliver it in the span of less than a month, right? And it may be that we don't have that level of success immediately, which is okay, right? But that means that we're going to need to double down on the organic marketing, right, and the outreach and the building of these other relationships, because those platforms already exist, right? In the end, what we're building wouldn't be something that no one else has made, right? So I don't consider us to be in a rush, and I speak for myself, but I believe that we're not in a rush to build a thing that other people have already built that works well. See OpenSea, Rarible, etc. Right? But we would love to do it with our spin and a broader community of collaborators and contributors that find benefit in how we're making it, right? So think about, I like to use the example of like Shopify compared to like WordPress and WooCommerce, right? So it's like they didn't really do anything different. They just made it look a little different. And it was a couple of clicks faster, and then that gained some momentum. So they started to attract some people to make extensions, and then voila, huge company, Shopify, right? So we're kind of like that, right? We're like, well, we're gonna start with the core thing, which is this comic series, right? And so to clarify, right, like none of us and nothing ever from the like the admin or expenses wallet has ever been liquidated, because we don't want to take anything out of the liquidity pool, right? So the sales from this episode 0 NFT, that will be denominated in either Pink or ETH. I actually don't think if we're doing it on OpenSea right now, right? So we're just going to accept ETH, right? And so then all of those proceeds, that's revenue that we get to use for the realization of this, right? And so, like, remember, I've built all of these things already, and I don't have the time to be able to do that in this context, but I know how it's done, and I have people that can do it, and they need money, right? They don't need a lot of money, but they need a little, right? So our expectation is to like measure the sales of this NFT and look at what we have to work with, because we don't want to sell any of what we have, and then see what we can do with it, right? Because let's just say, for example, we get like $5,000 in, right? Well, that's awesome. We can do a lot with that, right? Like money in crypto goes, in my opinion, really, really far, because a lot of people realize that 5K can be 50 in a few months, right? So, just to answer your question simply, you asked directly, like, when will we know more, or like when will we know a more solid date? I would say in the next week, the next week to 10 days, we'll probably have, it might be an informal announcement, but we'll certainly have a public update with regard to our timeline of when we're going to prioritize that. Because it's not an if, it's a when, right? We want to put our own spin on it and add some features that these other projects don't have. And discovering those features is like an organic process, right? Because we might not have imagined them yet, but we bring 10 other artists on and we ask them all, hey, what would you like to be able to do with an interactive comic series of NFTs that you can't do with this other platform? And so we asked that question to a dozen or a couple dozen people that all showed up because of our release of episode 0. We're going to learn some stuff, right? And if that stuff we learn allows us to make a feature that other people don't have, now our platform has meaning. And we couldn't have started that earlier. We have to start with putting something out there that is real and material, and that's episode 0, which I haven't seen. So I'm actually really excited.
Well, you're not the only one. I haven't seen it either. We've just seen bits and pieces. It's going to be a surprise to everyone.
I'm excited too because I already in works of episode 1. So
He's already on to the next one.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, Josh, to the point too of taking your time, right? Like that's key to me, right? Because I always use the analogy in early stage markets and companies. You have the innovators, then next you have the imitators, and then you have the pretenders after. So, when you have innovators, that's great. They're first to market. They set normal standards, right? But what fascinates me the most in emerging markets and early stage companies and projects in this sense would be the innovators, right? Or no, I'm sorry, the imitators, the ones that are doing what the innovators have done and imitating it in a way that's more in their style or maybe more, functionality wise better, just different spin-offs of it, and it becomes better. That's where I've seen in my personal investment history the most growth, right? And that's something I've always followed, is watching, who's the innovators of the markets and who are the people that are imitating that and are doing certain things to make it better, right? So that's something I love to hear, that you're not necessarily in a rush. You're not just throwing out dates. It's refreshing to hear that, because most people would just say, oh, in this date here, and then probably consider, pushing it back there and there forth. But you coming out and saying, hey, it's not something, we're rushing to do because it exists everywhere else. And, acknowledging the fact that you are doing it this way, as an investor, I appreciate it even more. And I'm familiar with it. So it resonates a little more with me. So that's awesome.
So glad to hear it, because it's like sometimes, and I'm not saying from these guys, but like I often get a little bit of resistance when I'm like, don't say a date unless it has meaning, and do everything you can, even if you think that it's going to put people off. Fine, right? Like if you're going to do a date, you hold yourself to that date, right? Your word is your bond. Like we don't have much else in crypto. And I'm so tired of all of the noise and all of the meaningless promises, and then all of the speculation and price action that manipulates people's priorities, right? Like we would like to remain kind of unadulterated by that and just focus on the mission, which is eventually to like encourage a bunch of other content creators, particularly those with interest in animation and comics. But even think about like voice actors, like musicians, like there's a lot of things that could happen here, right? We would love to be able to encourage lots of people who have interest in this to be able to contribute more and be rewarded for their contributions, right? So because that structure already exists, I mean, there's always new things to make. So we would like to make some of those, but we'll start with making the things we know how to make.
Solid plan for execution, right? Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Pablo. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was just saying that makes sense to prioritize it as needed. Scale with it. Absolutely. I was just went over your white paper and I noticed that, and I wanted to touch up about it. Also, touch over the fact that the token will potentially have governance, right, over a subscription model of sort.
Okay, I'm sorry. I heard
Yeah.
governance and subscription.
Yeah,
model
yeah. I was just
sometime.
asking about your plans for governance and maybe how you will send out updates and new publishes to potential subscribers.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna ping pong this to you, right? In this context, what do you mean by governance? Because that can mean many things.
Well, like how earlier somebody mentioned the fact that pink holders will be able to decide on new characters and artist submissions.
Okay, cool.
Using those tokens,
So, like,
right? Yeah, there's a use case. So like as a government's token, it can be used to say, okay, I want to vote this character over the other. And then also I can use this pink token to pay for my, subscription into the project, I think is what Pablo is trying to say, right?
Yeah, just trying to touch on that.
okay, totally. So yeah, we haven't figured that out yet. And basically we're just gonna like we're just gonna publicly be like, does this sound like a good idea? Does this sound fun? And then if it sounds fun, then cast your vote by spending $5 in gas and sending a transaction, right? And then we'll see how it goes. I will caution the use of the term governance here, where voting is a subset of governance. But governance, strictly speaking, is a very, very broad and deeply complex subject that does not have an optimal, like I don't think ever will have an optimal model, right? And so this happens to be, one of like the 4 or 5 most significant sectors or dimensions of decentralized technology that I see progressing over the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years, because governance can really I'm telling you, can get really, really, really broad and also really, really deep and narrow and technical, right? To the point where it's like, if you look at some of these Polkadot parachains, right, where like individual nodes can choose when they want to accept and deploy updates to their light client, where the light client, anyway, there's a lot of stuff going on there. And so like I totally get how that word makes sense in the context of like, hey, voting with applicability to the things that happen in the project. So like, certainly, right, that makes sense. But I would love to just have that in the subset of like voting and like crowd participation, and maybe not merge it with governance because of how significantly detailed and technical that can be, and also how relatively unexplored in the grand scheme of things it is. Is that fair? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fair. Absolutely. No, I hear you. So the token is gonna have voting power. Is pretty much what you're saying.
Yeah, like we're gonna just come up with some cool spots through the narrative, and we've already all talked about this, right? We're just gonna come up with some cool spots where it's like, choose your own adventure, right? Like if you ever did one of those books where you have to skip to the page, like, or you go to one of those like text-based like D&D kind of things, or whatever else, right? Where you get to actually choose the path. That's more in line of what we're trying to start off with. And then like, down the road, it's really a who knows thing, where it can certainly become something broader that starts to blend further in the realm of like other project decisions. But we would love for that to begin as like a fun exercise that's not burdened by, I guess, what amounts to like a combination of like technical and financial decisions, we would prefer this to just be like creative engagement and crowd participation first, and then find ways of blending that into the business model. And it's my opinion that going in that route lets us learn more and have more fun up front with less stress and less problems, and then more naturally move towards a system that lets us collectively make better decisions, right? Because it's like we're not gonna like if we give a couple votes and most people vote for a thing, it's not like we're not gonna do that, right? And so by nature, that means the things that we're doing are gonna like not suck, because it's not like everyone's gonna all vote for the thing that sucks. So I kind of think that experimenting with it in the context of like a free fictional realm that we just get to enjoy and experience and consume, almost lets us practice for when those decisions could represent a formalized method of making decisions that do have like real world impactful outcomes, right?
Absolutely.
Totally.
Absolutely.
And I'm following. I'm fascinated. I love listening to this and just kind of your perspective on everything. No, that's great. And also, Pablo, thank you for the question and jumping in. I know Kay was next there. Kay, did you have a question that you wanted to ask for the team here?
Yeah, I do have a question. Firstly, though, I did want to say that I did enjoy reading the pink paper. I like the fact that it's educational. You guys, whoever wrote it, went through, the different, token standards, for the ERC20 and the ERC 721, and the Ethereum improvement proposal. So I did enjoy that. But what I wanted to know is, I don't know about the marketplace. You guys are going to be using, or it looks like you're going to be using, is it the ERC 1155 for minting? Is that engine, or what is that? If it's not engine, what exactly is it?
It's a protocol.
And also, is that going to help, like, as far as saving your holders any fees, as far as gas fees, or how does it benefit them, if any?
So I can definitely take this one,
Yeah.
but Randy can totally take it too. You want to go, Randy?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. So anyways, there's two, and I'm not an NFT coding expert, but there are two major types of those NFTs there. And the second one is what OpenSeas uses to, when you mint on OpenSeas, that's what they use. So it's a standard, right? It's think of it like an Ethereum based token versus a Polygon token. Maybe that's not a good example, but one blockchain token versus another blockchain token. Each blockchain has a standard, and it's a standard. Both are on the Ethereum network in this case. But to get into the marketplace, I know we talk about this and there's a lot of questions about it, and it's the layer 2, and the layer 2 would save people money on gas. And so I think it's okay to say, there's a number of back-end solutions you can use, and one of them we're looking at is called Immutable X. And it's not like an OpenSea where you could just go and you could just use it. It's a back-end only. So you have to develop the front-end marketplace, you have to develop the back-end, and there's a whole bunch of integrations and different things you got to do. And so, when we get to the point where we're like, okay, now's the time, then that will be a platform that we look at integrating with. And at that point, it's a layer 2 solution. So at that point, that's kind of the engine, if you were going to call it an engine, that platform there. And when and if that would happen, that would be the NFTs would be minted there, and then it's inside this layer 2 marketplace. And if it's just us there, right, it doesn't make a whole ton of sense because you still have to move your Ethereum into that layer 2 marketplace. And then while you're inside, you could buy NFTs, sell NFTs, trade, auction, whatever you want to do. So it really, that was another reason why we kind of pulled back and we said, you know what, we got to focus more on the comic series first, because you have to build up that ecosystem and all that content. And because if we're the only ones on there, it doesn't make as much sense. I mean, these platforms are great for trading card games, because then you can trade all these cards that are directly associated with a game, and you're only paying the Ethereum for these cards. You're not paying the transfer fees and everything else. And that is another type of NFT that we plan on coming out with, is are like character cards. And think almost, I'm not talking about like these 10,000 mint projects where certain I don't even know if you can call them cards, but where they have different attributes and there's rarities. The kind that we're talking about coming out with are, think of more like World of Warcraft, or some of the old classic card playing games, that where those really fit inside those layer 2 solutions very well. But as our content grows and we start attracting other comic based and comic based projects, then it makes more sense, because now you've got kind of like, think of it almost as like a layer 2 mini open seas just for comic based projects. Also fan arts and game art and things like that. So that's what Josh was talking about when it was like, we kind of shifted gears, especially since you've got Marvel officially announced they are coming out with official Marvel sanctioned and created NFTs, which some people got really worried about, but we don't see it that way. We see it as it's a validation of the market. So who knows? Maybe someday somebody buys one there, and they come over to our future marketplace, and they've got them in there, because that's where all the comic people are. That's where all the fan art and game art people are.
Actually, that's where I was thinking ahead of it too as well. So perfect to hear you say that.
I was some of my friends who work in Marvel already got some mails that urging them not to sell Marvel content art in OpenSea and other platforms. So yeah, it seems like big companies are coming into this NFT show. Yes, and I mean, the thing I'm talking about is a previous subject, I know, but the NFTs aren't going anywhere, and it's going to be more worldwide, more going up, I mean. So in comic industry, the competition always supports each other. It's like if you have one company, that's great, but if you have 3, 4, and several, you will have more people who more people traveling across company to company. It's like competition is not a bad thing in the sector. What I want to say is that, but it creates more community for each other.
Gather more investors into one centric place, right? And as that expands more and more in whichever realm you're in, whether it's comics or whether you're into other things, I think it all merges at some point. And once you're familiar with the NFT, general ecosystem, right, you'll be able to, further start to expand. Same way in crypto, right? Like you start in one place, you learn it, you get comfortable, and you can start expanding out, maybe in other chains, for example, just, or projects at that, right? So
Exactly.
Yeah, very cool stuff. Okay. Did anybody else? I don't really see many questions in the chat. I just see people really buying. So I guess that's a good sign. But does anybody here, on our core team, maybe have any more questions? And again, if you're muted, you can feel free to type it in the chat. I don't mind asking. Does anybody have any more questions? Well, I know that sound. That's a good sound. That means that leads to Samantha, Lady Crypto. Yes, you've been waiting to fire these cannons. So you know what? I'm just going to say, here it is. Go for it. Tell us what we've been waiting for. I'm going to mute now.
Okay, so I did say at one point that I had 2 announcements. One of which has already been discussed twice. That is the NFT holder reward. So because it has been already discussed twice, I will say we've probably beat that one to death, and we can move on from that. I'm happy to repeat it, but I can also drop an image in the chat when I'm done with my other announcement that has all the details again on that. What I would like to say, going back to something Josh said that he made sure that we all recognize as important, and we agreed with him, is that it's really important to not just spew out dates before you really are ready to. And, something with our community is we've been making people wait a really long time for this comic series to be done. And, it takes a really long time to build an entire universe that has lasting power to be a series and characters that can grow. And it took months. And so we didn't want to just keep pushing dates and saying, oh, sorry guys, we're not there yet. So we haven't ever announced a date. We only recently said that we are getting close, and that is because we meant it, that we are getting close. 2 days ago we said we are going to be dropping an announcement, which that leads us to today. So I am very happy to announce that Pink's NFT original comic series will be dropping this Friday. I've just dropped a little teaser trailer in the, not a teaser, but a trailer in the chat there. It sounds pretty awesome with the music, so you should click on it and watch it. But this Friday, we are launching Crypto Force, and we're not making people wait. So you've got 2 days and it's done. So you'll get to see what all the hype is about.
Very exciting.
Yes. Finally can say it out loud. I'm so excited. I already in my mind am wondering what's going to happen. I am so excited for this. Great job, guys.
Totally amazing work.
Drawing was not the issue, but designing and calculating everything in the universe was taking a lot of time. So yeah.
Well, I'm just happy we got a date. Sounds like Friday it is. I'm gonna mark that down there, and I can't wait. And that's the day after my birthday. So let's do it. I'm totally excited, and just want to tell you all as well. Like this is been a very great AMA. I think that it's been educational for myself. So I know for others it has to be as well. So I just want to thank everybody from your team coming in and not only highlighting the project at a whole and the scaling process, but really teaching us more about NFTs and the ways that you're moving within that world. Only helps us as investors see it more, right? And as we hear it, we can piece things together. So these things are so beneficial, and it holds a lot of value to me personally, just in educational terms. So I've taken a lot away tonight, just from you and the team over at Pink's NFT, and I just want to say personally, thank you for that. This has been really delightful and great content, I would say.
Thank you so much for having us. We really were excited to have the opportunity to do this, and we wanted to time it in a way that we could kind of announce something great, and it just all aligned, and it aligned with your birthday almost. So, that is all good.
Was meant to be. And so for folks that are listening to this recording down the road, where is the best place to typically engage with the Pink's NFT project? How do we find you? What is the best method to get in touch?
I mean, I'm keeping all the social channels pretty active. Telegram, and in the future, by the time this makes it to someone's ears, our Discord might be live and well. But our website is always a great place to start. You can buy tokens directly on the website, and all of our social links are there. And that is pink-nft.com. And our Telegram is t.me/pink_NFT. So those are probably two good places to start. We are on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram as well.
Yes, and you'll also see, a lot of the DeFi Angels posting and following up with this as well. So we'll be able to share this with your community, and it's a great way to share amongst the crypto world. So yeah, this has been fabulous. And normally at this point we would circle back as an internal team to talk amongst each other. But in this case, given that this is an official pick, we wanted to see where you're at now, what are we doing, and we've captured that. So again, thank you for jumping on the call. At this time, I don't think anybody else really has questions. Okay, if you don't mind, we can go ahead and just kill the recording now, please. Awesome.